A 1, 2, 3, 4.
Oh, hello.
Kennedy's Corner, back on the dial, traveling at a speed of 45 RPMs, where the vinyl will bring you to a new destination. On with the show, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, Ferris Kennedy, and you are in Ferris Kennedy's Corner, or as I like to call it, Kennedy's Corner, presented by Serious Rock Talk. We are a Serious Rock Talk production, and this is Kennedy's Corner. And yes, normally I'm alone in the booth. There is no Dr. Clark today, but we do have a special guest that decided to join. Ladies and gentlemen, you probably heard the interview not too long ago. Please, a round of applause for the lead singer of Randomers, T-Bone Terry.
A live Kennedy is better than a dead Kennedy. Musical pun for all you punks out there.
It's good to see you again, or good to hear you again, T-Bone. I can't see you, but you know what? Just put your Facebook profile pic in front of me, and it's as if you're right here. So here we go.
Awesome. This is T-Bone Terry. Just synchronize my lips to the photo, and this is T-Bone Terry coming at you.
Now, today, ladies and gentlemen, T-Bone, he's doing me a favor. He said, you know what? I'll join you on this show, because he knows a little bit more about this than I do. Today we're going to talk about heavy metal bands that deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. And for years, music awards uniformly ignored the genre as it was becoming something of a long-running joke in the industry. Like the Grammys are still trying to win back brownie points after the Jethro Tull debacle, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame has been taking baby steps in the right direction with the inclusion of Metallica, Black Sabbath, Kiss, and finally Deep Purple just a short 23 years after they were eligible. They finally did it right last year on October 19th, 2024, where the legend Ozzy Osbourne was finally inducted as a solo artist for his Blizzard of Oz work. But realistically, you just can't ignore a genre as culturally or commercially creativity important as heavy metal. And T-Bone, I've always realized that heavy metal, what I like about heavy metal music, A, is the sound, B, the artwork on the vinyl cover, and C, the fans are honestly the most polite fans and most respectful fans in the industry. Am I right to saying that, those three things?
And loyal fans. We got the loyalist fans of them all. I put out an album with Eudoxus back in 1991, and some of those fans followed us all the way to 2023 when we put out our Evil Gods Fetish album. So that's Eudoxus fans that were, say, 20 years old back then, that are now in their 50s, are still around. That's why when we made the record Evil Gods Fetish, I made sure the lyrics inside were large enough for old eyes to be able to read without the magnifying glass.
This is the thing I love about metal, and I'll use the Holy Diver album cover by Dio, where I believe it's a priest that's got chains around him and there's some sort of demon trying to help him, or is this what I'm trying to gather?
You gather correct.
Okay.
It's pretty wild as a cover. And what's funny is that my son actually got me for Christmas a picture disc of Holy Diver, and it comes with a comic book in hardcover, which kind of goes through the whole story of this priest that goes to this island. There's these crazy people and this evil god that's there. So the whole story is in comic book form with that picture disc.
See, one thing about Dio, I got to read this quote, and you've probably seen this on my Instagram and all over the place. Dio had said, I am of Italian extraction, and my grandfather on both sides, both my mother's and father's side, came to America from Italy. Ronnie James Dio. I relate to this quote because I too am like Ronnie James Dio of Italian extraction, and my moniker is Kennedy. As Dio, his moniker is Dio, and his name was Padavona. So this is where I build the passion, and this is where I love these certain artists. And this is, like you said, loyalty. I'm loyal. I'm loyal to Dio because he's Italian. Is that correct?
What he hasn't revealed in videos or in interviews, rather, is that horns, that he uses the horns. He's of the Italian descent, and he talked about his granny doing the evil sign to ward off evil. But also, that's the way Italians hold the pizza, not to burn all their fingers. 2 fingers out to hold the pizza, and 2 fingers to exchange with the other 2 fingers when the pizza gets too hot.
It's the malocchio.
That's the evil horns. How to hold your pizza properly without burning your fingers and supporting the pizza without things falling off.
Look at that. Well, listen here, T-Bone. You are a very, very informative man, so now I'm going to put you to the test. You ready to dig into this, to these bands that are not in the rock and roll?
Ready, Freddy.
You're ready? Thin
Yep.
Lizzy. Thin Lizzy. What do you think about Thin Lizzy? This is a Scottish band. And obviously, you know, they're known for The Boys Are Back in Town, Jailbreak, Whiskey in the Jar, and Chinatown.
Yeah, this band has been in my turntable quite often. It's got some, I mean, they're one of those real bands. You know, when you say real, I mean, they're not pretending to be anybody else. When they hit the snare, they hit the snare. When they play the guitar chord, they're playing the guitar chord. They feel it. It's rock and roll, and the fans feel it too. And there's some great songs that you don't often hear, like Thunder and Lightning and Bad Reputation. It's things that don't usually go on the radio. On the radio, you're going to hear Boys Are Back in Town. You're going to hear Whiskey in a Jar. Thanks to Metallica, who put them on the map once again for the younger generation. But this is a great band, a good example of a rock and roll band that has withstood the test of time and is in there. They're on the list to be on the Hall of Fame. Is that correct?
They're on the list. They're not in yet. From the last time this article was written, and I'm trying to think back how many years ago, let's just say it was about 23, I'd say maybe 5 years ago. We're 2025, so let's say 2020. Yeah, they said they've been eligible for 21 years. It's probably longer than that now. I'd probably say it's been a quarter of a century they're ready to get in there, and they haven't been in there yet.
Yeah, they're in the category with like Nazareth or, you know, those kind of bands that are great bands that I love to enjoy listening to. Any album from this band, I'll put it on, and it's like, you know what you're getting. It's like a Motorhead album. You know what you're getting.
So they're not in yet. Do you think they should be in?
There's probably bands that will go in ahead of them, that's for sure. Did I understand correctly that the Deep Purple just got in, or they're going to get in? Or
I believe Deep Purple is in.
So yeah, it's bands like Deep Purple, maybe Judas Priest, Iron Maiden, which are going to get in before other bands. But yeah, they're definitely worthy of being up there and being remembered as one of the best.
So moving on top, this band actually was inducted in 2022, and this is probably one of your favorite bands, led by Rob Halford, Judas Priest. So what do you want to say about Judas Priest?
Yeah, that's right. They did get in. They did get in, and there was the some show I saw where Halford's singing with Dolly Parton. So that's country and metal worlds colliding. But yeah, so if they got into the Metal Hall of Fame or the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, that's great, because I mean this band has been going since the 70s, if not 69, 70, 71, and their album that they put out, I think it was still the end of the 70s. It was the Live in Japan, Unleashed in the East. I mean, that's a great example of early metal. You have songs like Running Wild and Sinner and Ripper and I mean, Genocide, Tyrant. I mean, and the list goes on to what's on this album. And this is like their early stuff, and they're kicking butt. Exciter became really the blueprint for my band Eudoxus back in the day. You know, it's all this double bass drumming, quick guitar playing. That's really the blueprint for a lot of metal bands with double bass drumming. So Priest definitely up there. In the 80s, they tried some commercial stuff, which personally I like. I end up liking a lot of stuff people don't like the Turbo album. Yeah, it was different, but it's good. Some people just take offense to it, and they say, I'm a purist, and metal's this way. No, it's a good album. It's got great songs, good songwriting, but then they got upset, and they got angry, and they put out Painkiller and shut everybody up, didn't they?
See, Judas Priest, a couple of the albums I know is, British Steel is one of them.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's one that's got, the other one has got like these wings, and it's like a orange-yellow cover.
Yeah, Sad Wings of Destiny, probably.
That's probably the one that I'm thinking of. And to me, I'm glad that they finally made it in after all these years, because it was long overdue. Because I just find that the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame just does not. I don't know. They don't really pay attention. I find after someone passes away is when they feel like, oh shoot, we feel bad. Let's put them into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame now. It's just you're waiting and you're waiting, and I'm glad it finally happened for them, because they did pay their dues. The next one I got here for you, my good friend T-Bone, is Motorhead.
Motorhead, yeah, absolutely. The first band I ever saw live, Motorhead. I didn't mention that I also saw Priest the last tour, and Halford's just, super live, and the band is just rejuvenated with Richie Faulkner on guitar. And it was just to say that I was going to mention which bands of the ones on your list I've seen live. Priest was one of them, and Motorhead was the first band I ever saw live. Why did I see Motorhead first? Because they were opening up for Alice Cooper back in 1987 or 88. It was your Raise Your Fist and Yell tour, Alice Cooper, and Motorhead was the first part. Being a big Motorhead fan, being a big Alice Cooper fan, that was the first show ever that got me out of the house into the old Montreal Forum to see my two heroes, Motorhead and Alice Cooper.
Yeah, and they're in, by the way. Motorhead is in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I believe 2020 is when they got inducted.
They deserve it, absolutely. Motorhead is one of my favorites. I have almost all their albums. I have a shit ton of albums, and I got most of them, and I put one on, and I don't dislike any of the songs. I know what I'm getting. I'll put in another record and go, I can't wait to hear this song, and look what he does on the drum. And, whether it's the original lineup or the most known lineup, which was the second lineup, or whether it's the latest lineup with Mickey D on drums, Mickey D being the guy that played on King Diamond. He played in Talkin also, but he also played in the Scorpions. He's one of my favorite drummers ever, and I've been listening to a lot of the later Motorhead stuff with Mickey D on drums, and it's just really cool stuff. You'll hear an inversed two, then one, then one and two. He'll flip the drum beat over, and it's like, whoa, that's so unusual and so fucking cool. You'll hear stuff like that, and and I haven't talked about Lemmy yet, which is like, he's God. There's the trick question, which is, if God and Lemmy had a fight, who would win? And the answer would be, it's a trick question, because Lemmy is God.
And that's probably why they put him in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2020, because I don't think they want to have any backlash. This is interesting now with the next band here, because David Coverdale was inducted in 2016 with Deep Purple, but as Whitesnake, the Hall, they only recognize him for his work in Deep Purple, but Whitesnake, they're still waiting. And I don't know, what kind of metal you want to consider Whitesnake, but do you think, Terry, they should be in there? They deserve the nod? You figured you should get some of these old bands in there before time is too late? What are your thoughts on them?
That's why I asked whether Deep Purple is already in, because definitely Deep Purple would have to be in before Whitesnake gets in, because Whitesnake's the offshoot of Deep Purple. Because when Coverdale got into Deep Purple, you could see on stage he didn't have much stage experience, and he's holding up a mic, and the mic is set up for a guitar player. You know how it goes up and then it goes forward like a boom stand? And, he really doesn't have much of a persona on stage. I think it kind of shows that it was probably one of his first big shows. It's that, I think it was this big show that Sabbath played at. There's a big rainbow in the back. Anyways, you could see him on stage, and you could see that his stage presence evolved by the time he got to Whitesnake. Because early on, he just looks like, okay, he sings good, but, he doesn't have much, it doesn't take up a lot of space on stage. But then what he did Whitesnake, and they were a great rock and roll band, hard rock band. And then it was 1987. I remember 1987 because me and my brother, we waited in line. I think it was, Boxing Day after Christmas. to get into Sam the Record Man in Montreal, downtown Montreal, on St. Catherine Street. And that's one of the records that we bought that day. It was the White Snake, called White Snake, which had the revamped version of, what's that song? Here I Go Again. Here I Go Again. He had put it out in one of his early albums, a hard rocking album, but it you could call it as a misfire because the world didn't know about it. You know, fans of Deep Purple and early Whitesnake would know about it, and you know, hard rock stations would play it, that and slide it in and stuff like that. But when that 1987 album came out, he just exploded. They just had, you know, Crying in the Rain, Still the Night, Is This Love? That album just put him on the map, and they were just above everybody else at that point. And then Steve Vai joined the band. So it's like, you know, this was like the band to be in for a while.
But Coverdale's been a busy boy because after his White Snake experience, he ended up teaming with the legendary Jimmy Page, went with Coverdale Page, did I believe?
That's right. I have that CD also.
Yeah, the one that he's got the yield sign, not a yield sign, but it's a straight and an arrow going two different ways. But yeah, so this is what we got here with Mr. David Coverdale. So he's a very, very influential lead singer. He's a very influential frontman, and he is in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So now, here we get to something here, a band that I'm actually shocked is not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I've seen this band twice live. Nico McBrain just kind of retired from touring, but not the band itself. Obviously, giving the name Nico McBrain, and we start saying Steve Harris, who's probably one of the top three basses of all time, in my opinion. Iron Maiden is not in, and T-Bone, I'm gonna have to say I'm a little disappointed that Iron Maiden did not make it in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame yet. What do you think?
Yeah, Iron Maiden was one of the first bands I also saw. I think I saw the Seventh Son of a Seventh Son tour. That's the one I saw. It was back in college days, and I went with my friend Peter, and we saw a great show by Iron Maiden, and I think it was Queensryche opening up, if I remember correctly.
Oh, that's another good band. Queensryche.
Recently, yes, Nico's out of the band because he's retiring. He did the last tour. A lot of people did not know that he did the last tour after having a stroke and not being able to even hold a fork for 3 months. So he rehabilitated himself, learned how to play the drums with different techniques just to get through the shows, and he got through the tour after having a major stroke. So that is a lot of heart, and that's the love of rock and roll. You know, you got a band like Maiden. It's the same members for so many years. Yeah, okay, so Dickinson left for a little while, came back with an extra guitar player. Now they got 3 guitar players, which is even better because they can recreate all the album stuff live. But this is a band that's got their sound down from album number 1 with the original singer.
Paul Di'Anno, who he passed away last year.
They had their sound down. They had the sound. They had that galloping bass thing going. Obviously, unmistakably Iron Maiden, and it's carried them through all these years of still playing excellent shows. Bruce Dickinson pushes a little less on the vocal. The latest albums, I can't say that I've really gotten into them, but regardless, this is a band that should be in the Hall of Fame, guaranteed 100%.
So to me, honestly, the latest albums, I do like Brave New World and I do like Dance of Death. I really like those 2 albums. Obviously, you know, Number of the Beast with Run Through the Hills, and it's just Number of the Beast. Like it's a staple album. It's one of those albums that you have to have in your. It's an essential to have in your vinyl collection.
Absolutely, cool art cover too.
That's it. And my feeling is that I've seen these bands perform live, and they're not mailing it in. They're still going. Okay.
Yeah.
And it leads me up to the next band, which I've seen twice. Once with Mick Mars, and now with John 5. And despite that they've been dominating cultural and commercial force all the way from the 80s and early 90s, you know, they have albums like Too Fast for Love, Shout at the Devil, they have Theater of Pain, Dr. Feelgood, which was the first album that they actually did all sober. And Vince Neil had said it was the worst experience in his life, but yet it's one of the biggest bangers of metal, or if you want to call it, you know, the new metal. Why isn't Motley Crue inducted in the Hall of Fame? Like, Tommy Lee is probably one of the best kick-ass drummers out there. Vince Neil, he's still going. His voice is still going.
Yeah, I hear you. The Motley Crue is kind of like the Van Halen. They're a party band, and maybe they're just that fact doesn't take them as seriously as, a serious band like Iron Maiden or like Judas Priest, or something that's really dark and has a whole thing happening, theatrical thing happening. Yeah, Motley Crue might be in the category of Van Halen. I wish they both get into the Hall of Fame. Motley Crue is a great band. I mean, early on they had Too Fast for Love. They exploded with Shout at the Devil, Theater of Pain. I mean, personally, I like the new stuff that they come out with now. And there's an album that was entitled Motley Crue. They had John Corabi as a vocalist. Now, what happened with Motley Crue is, Vince Neil went on to do his solo stuff, and they got John Corabi to sing on that album. I don't know if you're familiar with that album.
I'm familiar with the album. I try to find it on vinyl. It is so bloody expensive because it's a rarity.
I had a CD for the longest time, and the sound is amazing, and I think John Corabi is a great vocalist just because people are used to Vince Neil's sound, and this guy's completely different. The tour didn't go well, the shows didn't sell well, and the next album, Vince Neil was back. But if you take time to listen to this album, not as a Motley Crue album, I mean, it is a Motley Crue album. The other three guys are there, and it just kicks ass. This album has great songwriting, great sound, and it was rejected by the masses because it just wasn't Vince Neil's sound. So, but it's something worth listening to, and I think everything they put out, even recent, well, not that recent, but there's the Circus of something, Carnival of Circus or something, some DVD out there that I have, which is super amazing. Vince Neil at his best. The band's at its best, and it's really theatrical, great Motley Crue show.
Well, the beauty
should be in.
The beauty about Motley Crue is that there's Nikki Sixx and there's Tommy Lee. Did you know that Nikki Sixx is of Italian extraction, and obviously Tommy Lee is of Greek extraction?
Did you know that Tommy Lee was of the Greek extraction?
Exactly.
That's what's so great about that band.
And then when they put Corabi in there, it was great. It was two for one.
There you go. Extra toppings, extra mozzarella.
That's it. So now I'm going to move on to a band. I know this band. I'm not 100% familiar with their music, just because it's not the metal that I ended up really growing up to. But if you talk to my drum teacher, and obviously I'm speaking to you, you know this band, Slayer. They definitely need to be there. They're part of the Big Four, Yeah,
absolutely. Like I've told you before, when I was in high school, I was into bands like Accept, Raven, Motorhead, Venom. I was much, much less, or I was aware of Slayer, aware of Metallica, but not into them because I just wasn't. And but later on, when I joined Eudoxis, my thrash metal band in 1989, when I was still a teenager, we were going to play original songs that we'd on our Open Fire album, but we also wanted to play some covers. So we picked up Slayer, Rain in Blood. We picked up Megadeth stuff and Anthrax stuff. I think Anthrax we're going to talk a bit about later with Megadeth. But yeah, let's talk about Slayer. The album Rain in Blood, I mean, that is like a metal masterpiece. I mean, when you come to look at the songs, Angel of Death, Raining Blood, Altar of Sacrifice, great titles. It's, Lombardo. Oh, Italian Extraction, yes?
Yes, he is, actually.
Absolutely. There you go. That's why it's so great.
Yeah, that's why
just for that.
Dave Lombardo made the band.
Put him in just for that.
100%.
I mean, Lombardo's top of the top guy of the top guys. Yeah.
He's one of the top drummers out there for sure. The next band, obviously, really of Italian extraction, it's Dio.
Dio, absolutely, yeah.
And I don't know why they're not in. I don't know why. Like, he did stuff with Elf. He did stuff with Rainbow. He did stuff with Sabbath. He's got his own band.
Yeah. He started off very early on. I've seen some photos where he's looks like a regular dude, and I think he plays bass too. And he's doing, light rock or pop music. And I think it took the Elf, it took the Rainbow, especially the Sabbath, to bring out his voice. His voice matured, his voice blended in with the music, and he became the legend that he is. Because this is a guy who, despite the fact that he's 5'4", three, maybe the same size as Angus from AC/DC.
Yeah,
That'd be a great band. Him playing on stage, filling up all that sound with two short guys. But not to make light of it, but this guy's voice is the heaviest voice that ever was. It is so melodic and so aggressive and so deep that nobody touches him. Nobody touches Ronnie James Dio.
because he proved that after he left Sabbath in '82, he formed Dio, and he proved that the cultural force that he had. That album, Holy Diver, Shot in the Dark, that song alone, like you could hear his voice, you could hear the way it just screams with clarity. And
yeah, that's what I like about metal. Sometimes not necessarily metal, but any band where there's a musician that's either put out of a band or leaves a band that has something to prove. You know, that Dio definitely had something to prove after leaving Sabbath, and he did it. He did it in flying colors.
He did it with flying colors. So here's now a third of the big four. So if people that are listening, the big four is Metallica, Slayer. We got Anthrax right now. So what do you think about Anthrax? Do you think they need to be in there?
Absolutely. There's some Italians in there for sure. definitely be in there.
Well, I'm going to call the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and say, listen, quarto italiano qui
That's
che
right.
deve
If
stare...
they had like a country thing, I think the Italians would be... it's kind of like soccer, you know what I'm saying? And Italian food. Who comes close to pizza? Nobody else comes close to pizza.
Hey, we perfected that thing. That's the best.
When it comes to Anthrax, it's a band that I got into very early on. Like I said, when I got into Eudoxus, we would do covers. What's hot out there? Let's see. There's Anthrax, Megadeth, Slayer. Let's do covers of these guys do along with their originals. And they got some great early albums. State of Euphoria, the Persistence of Time. I think they opened up for Maiden. Maybe I saw Maiden a second time. And I think they opened up for Maiden. So I saw Anthrax open up for Maiden. This was back in, who knows, back in the 80s somewhere.
No, that's a good opening act, because when I saw Maiden, I had, it was Alice Cooper that opened up for Maiden.
Wow, cool.
Yeah, I got to see the metal god himself, right?
Yep.
So this is, so definitely Anthrax, I believe with you, yes. Any one of the big four should be there. And speaking of the big four, here we are. The fourth of the big four is Megadeth with Dave Mustaine. He already had a Grammy, so he's got that taken off his list. He's good. I think he's done enough to genre at least a spot in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. You know, this guy...
Yeah, there's another guy that had something to prove, you know?
He got kicked out. I believe he got kicked out of Metallica, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, he got kicked out of Metallica.
Yeah.
You know, when you got one chance in a million, you end up in Metallica. And then you get kicked out. You know, he could have ended up as nobody or dead or who knows what. But he had something to prove. And he pulled off Megadeth, which is like, wow. And to tell you the truth, if I had to pick one over the other, I enjoy Megadeth albums much more than I enjoy Metallica albums. Metallica albums, I like them, but Megadeth is like, oh my God. I saw them on tour just now a few months ago. They played for their latest album. They played here in Laval, and I went to see them. And my God, musicians, top notch. Dave's still, Dave, and I walked out of there with my jaw on the ground.
Because their albums with Rust in Peace, Peace Sells, and Countdown to Extinction is probably by far, to me, it's an underrated album. I love that album.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, people didn't like it because it was more melodic, whatever. And even the one they did afterwards, Cryptic Writings, it was more melodic. People didn't like it. I liked that one. I liked Euthanasia. I liked the one you just mentioned. I'm a big fan of Megadeth, and I saw them recently, and they're still rocking out.
And then the last one here that they got is, let's see here. I see here White Zombie. What do you think?
I saw White Zombie. I saw White Zombie live. Let me try to remember who I saw them with. They opened up for Ozzy. Yeah, they opened up for Ozzy, one of the last Ozzy tours. I think I saw the last two Ozzy tours, and White Zombie opened up for one of them. So, it wasn't White Zombie, it was Rob Zombie on his solo project, which is very similar to White Zombie. But, White Zombie came out, I think it was it 80s, and they had, what was that song? Thunder Kiss 65. Actually, on the internet, if you put in Thunder Kiss 65 and you put kids band or little girl sings it, there's this really cute video of a little kids band. The girl's like 8 years old, and the band's maybe like teenagers, and they're playing a groovy, great version of Thunder Kid 65, which is like, for kids, playing a groovy song like that, and it's really good. Check it out on YouTube. Going back to White Zombie and Rob Zombie, there's the they have really cool videos. Dragula and actually that's Rob Zombie. And let's see, what was their song? They had More Human Than Human. That was a song. I'm looking at my CD here.
Because they've also he did the American Nightmare song, I believe. The American Nightmare song with the Howard Stern movie there, Private Parts.
Yeah. It's a band that's an offshoot of there's the Alice Coopers and the Shock Rockers, and then there's this guy Rob Zombie and White Zombie. And White Zombie was a sound that was unusual at the time. When I heard that guitar solo and More Human Than Human, it's like, what is that? But in a way, to say, hey, that's pretty genius. It's out of the ordinary. And I'm sure that influenced a lot of people. The sound, it was kind of like, the beats were different. It was almost dance at times, and almost, very different kind of music, very groovy. And some people are into it, and some people are not into it. It's on the list, and it's a good one, but it's definitely after a few bands.
That is amazing, and I'm really glad, Terry, you took the time today to help me out with this, because I love heavy metal, but the stuff I talked about today, it's not all of it is in my collection of music. I don't have any Judas Priest, nor no Motorhead, but I do have a lot of Motley Crue. I have a lot of Dio. I got a lot of Iron Maiden. I got a lot of Metallica. I have Megadeth. I got all the ones that I guess I grew up to in my era, and obviously the age gap between you and I plays a key role.
So much good music, so little time. I always say that because it's so true. Take out a CD, put it on, or a record, put it on, drop the needle, have a great time, and if you could listen to most of them in a lifetime, hey, that's great. If not, there's a next lifetime, and who knows, maybe on the other side, we'll be jamming with Jimi Hendrix and whoever else joins us between now and then.
Well, once the other side hits, I definitely look forward to jamming and playing drums with Taylor Hawkins, who's one of my inspirations when it comes to musicians.
Absolutely, yeah.
I miss him dearly because he's the reason why I decided to go to drum school and start learning how to play the drums. And I don't regret it, because I think it's it's great to try to learn and read music. And
he played with Alanis Morissette, and then
Sass
he was
Jordan.
handpicked by Grohl. That's quite the honor. A drummer who is Grohl picking you to be his drummer is a good honor.
It is a good honor. And this is it for the metal portion. I want to thank T-Bone Terry for taking time out of his busy schedule to sit with me for a good 30 minutes or so and talk about bands that should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame that have been snubbed so far, and they're metal, which is wrong.
Yeah. Keep your horns up, and when you're eating your pizza, use the horns to hold your pizza. That way you don't burn all 4 of your fingers holding the pizza. You burn 2, and then you can alternate. That's the horns. The metal horns hold the pizza very steady in a triangular fashion without dropping it, and you don't burn all your fingers.
You are a man of wisdom, my friend. I really appreciate that.
If there's one thing I learned throughout my metal years, that's the one thing.
Well, this is great. So I'm going to sign off as Ferris Kennedy, and our guest, T-Bone Terry, would like to say a goodbye to everyone, too.
And to sign off, I'll say who's not on the list is Spinal Tap. They should be on the top of that list. Spinal Tap. Spinal Tap Part 2, the sequel, is coming out this summer.
I can't wait to see that, actually.
Yeah, it's so true, and that's why it's so great.
Well, this has been great, and this has been a wonderful episode of Kennedy's Corner with special guest T-Bone Terry. Have yourself a great day.
Okay. Always be a live Kennedy, never a dead Kennedy.
Tune in next time.